What's going on, everyone? It's Taylor Cowles for CLNS Media, and I'm honored to be joined by one of the smartest trench enthusiasts in football, and especially on football Twitter. He is the author of the Trench Warfare newsletter, an offensive line scout for Bleacher Report, an offensive line and defensive line analyst for Establish the Run, and scouting coordinator for OL Masterminds, which does some incredible work. Without further ado, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
the Patriots went very offensive line heavy on the third day of the draft, which a lot of people didn't expect. They wanted weapons, but thanks to you, I now understand the value of offensive line play. So I was pretty excited about it. They got two guys though who seem to be playing positions that people didn't necessarily expect. You got Jake Andrews, who people assumed was going to be a center, playing more right guard in OTAs and mini camps. And then you also had Sidy Sow, who was projected to be a guard. He was playing more offensive tackle. Do you think that they are guys who can thrive in those positions in the league? Or do you think maybe this is just that time where Belichick's trying to see what guys can do and, if they have more flexibility than may have been anticipated?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think it's just experimentation, just seeing what guys can do, getting them a little bit familiar with those positions. So, in emergency type situations, they could potentially fill in. I think that's just kind of a typical thing that a lot of teams do, cross-training guys, just getting them, just increasing their versatility a little bit, and just kind of seeing what you have, I think, more than anything. I think Andrews could probably play guard potentially, but I prefer him at center. And then Sidy Sow, I think he's definitely a guard. I don't really see tackle, but I mean, in a pinch, maybe that's, kind of what you're hoping for, to kind of fill that Mike Nwaneri role, a little bit, a guy who could play both, but I don't know that he would be able to play it quite as well as him. But, I just, that one's a little bit more of a mystery to me.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned the offensive tackle depth. It's a little disappointing that you don't think that Sow is going to be someone who can play tackle, because that seems like a position Patriots could definitely use some reinforcement in. Now, we only saw Trent Brown for one minicamp practice. He didn't participate in team drills. And you really have guys who are more kind of backup caliber. Calvin Anderson was the main left tackle. Riley Reiff and Connor McDermott seem to be competing at right tackle. From your perspective, do you think the Patriots have enough tackle depth to get through this season and, not have to necessarily work around those guys, just run their typical system? Or do you think that maybe they could use some more reinforcements, or that's something that needs to still be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, if one of your starting tackles goes down, if you're, maybe 97, 98% of the NFL, I mean, you're going to have to change things. It's just the way it is. So they're no different than anybody else, I don't think, not in any drastic kind of way. Yeah, it's a clear downgrade if guys get hurt. I mean, even the starting option at right tackle, if it's Riley Reiff, I mean, you can't feel too great about that at this point, considering his age, and then also just, propensity to get hurt. That's tough. And then, I mean, me looking at it, I would like to see Mike Nwaneri play right tackle,
You and Pat's Nation, man.
Yeah,
It's a mystery.
that would make sense to me, because then you have more options at guard, potentially there. So that may be something we see eventually if we don't see it early on. I think that's a possibility though. But yeah, I mean, to get back to your question as far as tackles, yeah, I mean, like the depth isn't great, but I mean, I can't think of any tackle depth in the entire NFL that's great if I'm thinking about it. I'm sure there's one or two teams that have, some really good swing tackles, but there's not a lot. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of hopeful on Calvin Anderson. I think that there's still some things there that he can improve on. He's definitely good in the run game. But pass protection is going to be a major issue if he has to play in place of Trent Brown. So yeah, that's definitely a concern.
That's something I'd love to hear from left tackle spot. But you're right. That's one thing we got to keep in perspective. Offensive tackle, There's some of the freakiest athletes in football. So you're not going to find a lot of guys who you're like, no, they can go against Von Miller or one of those really good guys and they'll be fine. So now we'll slide inside. If they were, in an ideal world, they move on Nwenu to tackle. It seems like the best fit at right guard would probably be Antonio Mafi. How confident would you be in him being able to potentially slide in as a day one starter at right guard if need be?
I mean, I kind of liked Mafi as a late day 3 pick for, his size, his demeanor is great. He's a great finisher. He really is physical, brings kind of an edge to the offensive line, and he's pretty good in the run game, but definitely limited athlete, definitely not super technically refined in pass protection. He's smart. He could see things quick. He passes off games well, things like that. So there's some appeal there. He'll be able to kind of like execute assignments mentally and not like, have, MEs, mental errors and missed assignments, that kind of thing. But in terms of one-on-one, matching up against a good or better three technique, I mean, you're going to have to protect him, for sure. He's going to be a liability there. So in that respect, pass protection, drop back passing game, I'd be worried. But, in a lot of other aspects, I think he could fill in and be okay, so that's kind of where I am there. I think him or CD So, would probably play right guard. Just looking at the depth chart, I think it'd be one of them. I don't know what Chasen Hines is like, now in terms of where he is on his development, but even him coming out, in the run game, he had some really appealing traits as a run blocker. I mean, he's a little bowling ball on the move, kind of like Shaq Mason. He has a little
squatty big dudes.
Yeah, and he can move, he's fast and he's powerful. So he has like a little sliver, of Shaq Mason to his game. So that's kind of an interesting one too. But yeah, they have some options there. You would have more options, like as with most units, you have more options inside than you do at tackle. It's just
right.
Kind of the same thing here.
Right. So I'll end the offensive line segment of this with something that maybe is a little more optimistic. Now, Cole Strange started the year pretty rough. I remember I specifically was asking you like what was going on because he was kind of getting beat by the same moves. It was like those double swipes were just killing him early in the season. And then it seemed like in terms of protection, he was a little more consistent, didn't give up as many pressures. What did you see maybe change for Cole Strange throughout last season, specifically towards the end? And how do you feel about him going into year two? Is there something specific that he really needs to work on? Do you think that he can make a jump? What do you see in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely early, for him to play as a full-time starter. I think if you look at the most common opinion of him, it was like, whoa, like he was obviously a shocking first round pick, by most regards. So for him to come in and play every, or most of the games or whatever he did, was impressive just in of itself. But when you look at his game, he certainly is raw in pass protection. It did get better a little bit. I mean, week 11, what was it against the Jets? Or was it week 8 or week 11? I forgot which one when he got benched. Because
I think it was the Jets. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they played the Jets in 8 and 11, week 8 and 11. I don't remember which of those games it was, but one of those games, he just, which is kind of the second half of the year, it was like in the middle or second half of the year, he just got destroyed by Quinnen Williams. And then Cam Hayward also, destroyed him too. But, that kind of stuff, if you lose to those two guys as a rookie, that's fine. I don't think that's, even if you get killed against those guys, that's not like a huge red flag to me. But,
most do.
He also, what's up?
Because most guys do. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, especially rookies. I mean, even the really good guys, they can lose reps against those guys. But I mean, rookies, by and large, when you see a superstar go against a rookie or a backup, he's going to have a great day. It's just the way it is. But yeah, I think specifically with his game, why he loses as much as he does in pass protection specifically is, he has a tendency to open up too quickly towards the rusher, which creates a two-way go because it turns his shoulders and his hips towards the rusher. So he's vulnerable getting beat across his face. And then simultaneously, he also has an over-reliance on using two hands to strike guys. And that's just kind of a recipe to lose quickly against any sort of refined pass rusher because, they want you to give them your hands. And if you're giving them both of your hands and they connect on a swipe, on a club, I mean, you're done. So he needs to diversify his hands a little bit, use more independent hands, also stay square, just a little bit longer in his pass set. That way he can, kind of eliminate that two-way go. So, and kind of utilize his athleticism a little bit more. He'll be able to redirect more naturally and things like that. So, that's things that typically, those sort of technical improvements come, over time, especially guys who are extremely, athletic and physically gifted like he is. Like he has the foundation, for the game to slow down for him and for him to, play a little bit faster and a little bit more efficiently. So I think it's certainly possible that he's going to get better. I mean, I liked him coming out as like a third round. I think I had a third round grade on him as somebody who could develop into, a quality starter. And it's just his timeline got sped up, obviously being a first round pick. So, and we saw kind of the rocky moments, that reflected that. But I do have optimism with him, being able to make those improvements and at least be more of a solid guard this year, as opposed to kind of a liability, like he was, a lot of the time this season. But he brings some good things in the run game, and again, you love kind of the way he plays. I really appreciate the fact that he has kind of a short-term memory. I mean, like he'll go out there and get, dusted by a move, but then he'll come back and he'll go at the guy again, and he just keeps coming, at guys.
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like that's encouraging as well. You don't see him, like kind of fall apart ever.
Right.
He's always coming back. So there's some encouraging things there. And that left side, I think, could be just really good. I know Trent Brown takes a lot of pride in kind of helping Cole Strange along. And I think as long as Trent Brown's healthy, you can't get much better of a left tackle than Trent Brown when he's healthy. He's definitely a top 10 tackle to me, left tackle, that is. So, as long as he stays healthy, I think that's going to do a lot, for Cole Strange's development.
Hopefully no more flu games for Trent Brown.
Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times, that's 10 times your first bet amount of bonus bets and up to $200. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you could spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to be, hitting the first home run. All in the app that's safe, secure, it's super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
I'm actually going to sneak one more offensive line question in here because it's interesting. A lot of people see Strange and they assume that his issue is his size and that he's just going to get bullied like that. But you mentioned a lot of more technique-based. So with Adrian Klemm in the fold now, obviously Matt Patricia was completely overwhelmed by having to coach the offensive line and be the coordinator, which just wasn't realistic. Do you think that Adrian Klemm is someone who could really kind of help these guys reach a different level? Obviously, the par last season was pretty low. But what do you think of him as a coach and how much he can do for that unit?
Well, first, I think you make a really good point that has to be considered in all this, and that's the coaching staff and kind of the coaching that they were exposed to last year, specifically Cole Strange as a rookie, having the situation that they did with the offensive line room that was not conducive, for success. So that's a huge part of this as well. So with that said, just going to a competent offensive line coach now, that's going to be a huge jump, and it's going to help everybody. And I think Cole Strange, as much as anybody, and especially these rookies, that are coming in. I mean, I definitely think Adrian Klemm, everything that I know about him, he's competent, at a bare minimum, if not just like a plus, to the offense and to the offensive line room as a whole. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point and a huge part of why people should be encouraged, about this offensive line, just it's kind of a night and day difference.
Yeah, because things were pretty rough last year, to say the least.
Yeah.
Now switching over to the defensive line. One of the headlines for the Patriots has been Lawrence Guy. He's currently holding out, and it works against him that he's 33 years old. And he's a run first player, and obviously the perception of those guys isn't the best because you want guys to give you pass rush. But I tweeted today, run defense ain't sexy, but it's necessary. So do you see him as someone who is an integral part of that interior defensively for the Patriots from what you've seen? Or do you think that maybe he's putting a little too much dip on his chip trying to get a new deal?
Yeah, that's a tough one to say. I mean, I think Carl Davis is a fine rotational guy, against the run, give you a little bit of a bull rush here and there. I mean, Barmore, obviously you want him to take a jump and just continue ascending. And then, Devon Gottschall as well is solid against the run. I think they'd probably be okay without Lawrence Guy, honestly, but they would just be that much better with him as well. It's it's really going to come down to, how they personally are evaluating how guys look in camp. If there's maybe a wild card guy we're not even considering, who could defend the
Sam
run.
Roberts, maybe? Do you know?
Yeah,
are you familiar with his game?
I'm not very familiar with Sam Roberts at all, but I would not be shocked to see a Bill Belichick defense find a good run defending interior defensive lineman. I mean, he's been doing that for 30 years. Right. So yeah, that's like one of his specialties. He's going to find those guys. So with all that kind of said, I think maybe Lawrence Guy, this is kind of the wrong team to hold out on if you're a run defender, just because it's Bill Belichick, they're going to figure it out most likely. So, but that said, I do think Lawrence Guy would probably have a lot of value elsewhere, probably more value elsewhere, in some respects. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, I think.
Definitely. Now, Josh Uche, someone who Matt Judon said is an even better pass rusher than he is, which sounds crazy, when you just hear it because of all the success that Judon's had in New England. You had Cam Jordan compare him to Von Miller last year. I think it's because of that ghost move that they both use. What do you see from Uche? What was it that helped him kind of make that jump in year 3? And what do you think his game may look like in a contract year? Is there something kind of like Cole Strange where he can really work on something to improve and reach a next level? Or, where do you see him going?
Yeah, definitely arrows pointed up with him, obviously. Just the year he had last year. A good amount of those were high quality sacks as well. I chart all the sacks from every defensive lineman in the league just to kind of really unpack, the numbers a little bit. And he definitely had a good amount of high quality sacks. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but people can check that article out on my site. But yeah, I just think it's playing time, really. He played 34 or 38, 40% of the snaps last year. If he could play, a little bit more, I just think the numbers will probably stay the same, if not get a little bit better. So I think he is what he is, really, in terms of his size and everything. I don't know that he'll become a plus run defender. I suppose it's possible if the technique is really good, but Von Miller's obviously a really good run defender. But I don't think Uche is Von Miller either. But he does have some shades of Von to his game in terms of how he wins. He's pretty much a pure speed rusher. And he's really good at setting guys up, really good bend. He's explosive, twitchy, and bendy, and he has some moves. He was at Von's pass rush summit this past month or whatever. He was there, picking up moves and stuff. He definitely seems like a student of the game and somebody who's really trying to work on his game. So I would expect a similar type of year this year. A double-digit sack would not surprise me. I think that probably should be the expectation. He has the traits to do that. I don't think this was a fluke year or anything like that. I don't know what his ceiling necessarily is. If he adds a little bit more power to his game and has that threat that he can throw out there against, offensive tackles to where they have to respect his power a little bit more, man, maybe he could get 15 sacks. I don't think that's crazy. So yeah, I think he's a really good pass rusher, underrated. Not a lot of people were paying attention to him because he only had that one good year so far, but even going back to Michigan, he had flashes where it was like, he was hitting the ghost move in Michigan, and doing it in really, really incredible ways. So he's definitely has the talent. Now I think he's just starting to put it together. And yeah, like I said, I would expect another really good year from him for sure.
I love to hear that, especially from you. All right, now I'm going to wrap things up with one of my favorite draft picks for the Patriots, Keon White. Obviously a pretty raw guy, but has all the talent in the world. Kind of reminds me of Judon. I'm sure you remember that play where he ran with the running back 30 yards downfield. And if he didn't look back, he might have actually gotten the breakup. What do you think fans should expect from him in year 1? Again, kind of a raw guy, but also DeMarcus Covington is so good. And you mentioned how important coaching is. So yeah, what do you think? Maybe if you could do a floor ceiling, what are you thinking for Keon?
As a rookie, that's kind of a different question than, over the course of his rookie contract, because because he is pretty raw, he comes and goes, disappears in games when you watch him, but then when he appears, it's, fireworks. So he certainly has an element of explosive power to his game that is with the length that is really I don't want to say really rare, but it's definitely special. It's definitely something that if you could develop, better pad level, better technique, better leverage on a more consistent basis to where his floor is a little bit higher. I mean, his ceiling is certainly high. I don't think there's any question about that. It's just about his floor. And he's in a great spot to, develop, obviously, in New England. Anybody, any defensive player in New England, you feel good about most of the time. And I love the fact that he's behind, or he's going to be able to be mentored by Dietrich Weiss, as well, because that's a very similar type of guy in terms of how they're going to win. Inside, outside versatility, long, kind of an unconventional rusher for tackles and guards, because they have enough quickness and enough power to threaten both. I think that's exactly what, you would hope for Keon White. So that would be my ceiling, or at least, let's say, optimistically, Weiss is his floor, but I think realistically, that's kind of the middle of what you're, expecting from Keon White in years 2 and 3. Like, you would love to have another Weiss out there. And, if the high end hits, you have Weiss, plus 25% or something, you know what I mean? That's probably what you're really hoping for. But yeah, I think he's in a great spot, for a variety of different reasons. And I was a fan of him because, just studying offensive linemen, going against him last year. I remember Asim Richards, the North Carolina left tackle. That tape from Keon White was really, really good. If people get their hands on that, check that one out, because Keon White he had 3 or 4 moves in that game where just Asim Richards, who's a big, strong guy, just got, crumbled. So he has the power to really threaten tackles and the quickness to really threaten guards. And that's something really fun to work with. And I think New England can maximize that.
That Asim Richards tape I actually studied because of you. You tweeted something about it, and I was like, all right, I got to see this for myself. And that was the first time they were both on my radar. I had Asim Richards as a guy they may have taken later in the draft, but glad they got the guy on the other side of the ball. Brandon, awesome. Thank you so much for your insights. Incredible. Let everybody know where they can find you, and just plug away if there's anything you want people to know about.
Yeah, just go to trenchwarfare.substack.com and you can find all my work there. Establish the runs coming up. So, I usually just work with them in season, but I do the top 32 offensive line units and the top 32 pass rush units for Establish the Run. That'll be out actually next month. So people can look out for that, where I'm going to rank all those units. And then offensive line masterminds in like 2 weeks. So I'm going to have articles, around that, maybe a podcast, something like that. So I'll be there. Right now I'm scouting pass rushers for that. So yeah, some stuff that you can find on Trench Warfare, my Twitter account. Yeah, Brandon Thorn NFL's Twitter and Instagram as well. I post stuff on there as well. So
I follow you there too. If you like trench play, you have to be following Brandon. And if you don't appreciate it yet, you still need to be following Brandon, because it's very important to this game that we all love. Buddy, thank you so much. Everybody take care. Have a great day.